Kevin Hart is so tiny. How tiny was he? He's so tiny that if he were around during the slavery days, they wouldn't use a whip to tear through his black back. They'd use dental floss.
Like, what is it that you expect me? You want me to take a live production and stand up and fight Tony or have a reaction like
on the Breakfast Club, and he was talking about how, what was I supposed to do? Jump up and, you know, Tom Brady did that, right? Tom Brady did that.
I love Robert Kraft.
The controversy surrounding the offensive jokes at Kevin Hart's Netflix roast continues to spark intense debate across social media, with more and more black comedians stepping forward to publicly criticize Kevin's response to the situation. For anyone who hasn't been keeping up with the story, the controversy centers around comments made by two comedians during the event, Tony Hinchcliffe and Shane Gillis, whose material immediately triggered backlash. The strongest criticism was aimed directly at Hinchcliffe's joke about George Floyd. But what really fueled people's frustration and disappointment was seeing how hard Kevin laughed at the joke. The context is important here. Kevin was actually one of the high-profile celebrities who attended George Floyd's memorial service in 2020, which made his reaction to the joke feel even more troubling and contradictory to many viewers. You've done good though, Kevin. The black community is so proud of you. Right now, George Floyd is looking up at us all, laughing so hard that he can't breathe. God bless you, Kevin. The people most deeply hurt by both the joke and Kevin's reaction were George Floyd's own family members, who understandably felt betrayed. George Floyd's brother, Terrence Floyd, and his uncle, Selwyn Jones, both released public statements expressing how shocked and hurt the family was after watching Kevin laugh so openly at jokes targeting their loved one's tragic death. Terrence specifically pointed out that Kevin's attendance at George's memorial showed he understood the family's pain, which made seeing him laugh at the material feel like a complete betrayal. He also directed criticism toward Netflix and the production team, arguing they had both the ability and responsibility to remove the joke during post-production, but chose not to. However, the issue goes beyond that one George Floyd joke, because it wasn't the only moment where Kevin appeared entertained by material centered on black trauma and suffering. Shane Gillis delivered multiple jokes referencing painful chapters of African American history, including one suggesting Kevin's ancestors arrived in America on a slave ship trapped inside a bottle. He also included a lynching reference, and once again, Kevin's reaction was impossible to miss. He laughed so hard that he actually stood up and shook Shane's hand afterward in appreciation.
Kevin's origins, you have to go back to the beginning. Kevin's ancestors came to America in a slave ship in a bottle. Kevin actually did really well in Saudi Arabia, but only because they thought he was the monkey from Aladdin. Kevin's so short that they're going to have to lynch him from a bonsai tree.
The controversy escalated even more when Kevin appeared on The Breakfast Club to defend Tony Hinchcliffe's comedy. During the interview, he told both fans and critics that people needed to move on because, in his view, nothing should be considered off limits in comedy. Kevin argued that pushing boundaries is exactly what comedians do, and that's the reason he agreed to sit in the roast chair in the first place. To be the target of unrestricted jokes. It happens every year when they do a roast. It's not new.
Every year when they do a roast, it's not new. This isn't a new... It's not a new agenda. It's not a new approach to comedy.
Do you feel like Tony Hinchcliffe went too far when he made that joke about George Floyd?
It's Tony Hinchcliffe.
Yeah.
I don't expect less. I don't expect more.
I feel like you're saying going too far is the...
After that interview, criticism toward Kevin intensified, with several comedians publicly challenging his position. Comedian D.L. Hughley specifically took issue with Kevin's claim that he didn't understand what people expected him to do, and his suggestion that he couldn't have simply jumped up and dragged Tony off the stage. DL's response was simple but effective. Kevin absolutely could have done something because he already knew what material was coming and approved it being included in the final production. As for Kevin's argument that he couldn't physically intervene, DL pointed to a perfect example from Tom Brady's Netflix roast, where Tom interrupted Jeff Ross during a joke aimed at Patriots owner Robert Kraft, proving that roast subjects can and do stop material when they feel a line has been crossed. That you expect me. You want me to take a live production and stand up and fight Tony or have a reaction? If you are upset that the night went on, that's a different conversation. There's nothing I can do. It's a production. It's a live. Jeff Ross later tried to downplay the Tom Brady moment, saying Tom was simply joking around. But comedian Andrew Schultz later revealed information that significantly weakened Kevin's argument. According to Andrew, Netflix had specifically instructed every roaster participating in Tom Brady's event not to make jokes about Robert Kraft's 2019 arrest involving soliciting sex workers. That revelation made it clear that restrictions do exist and that certain topics are treated as completely off limits. For critics, this directly challenges Kevin's claim that there are no rules in comedy. They argue that boundaries clearly exist when powerful interests are involved. Certain reputations receive protection, while other forms of trauma remain fair game. The criticism goes even further. Many argue that when Black pain, Black trauma, and Black historical suffering become the punchline, those same protections suddenly disappear. If one of those comedians had made jokes about certain events from World War II, do you really think Kevin would have reacted the same way? Do you think Netflix would have aired the material without consequences? Many people believe the answer is obvious. The fallout would likely have dominated headlines for months. Public apologies would have flooded in from everyone connected to the production. Educational initiatives would probably have been announced. Politicians would have weighed in. The entire incident would have become a major cultural flashpoint. Yet when the subjects are slavery, lynching, or police brutality against Black people, critics argue that the material is often dismissed as edgy comedy, and anyone who objects risks being labeled overly sensitive or too woke. That perceived double standard is what many find most frustrating about this controversy. They argue that people are told nothing is off limits in comedy, while everyone involved understands that certain topics remain protected depending on who is affected. The debate also brings to mind comments made years ago by Denzel Washington during an interview, remarks that many believe remain highly relevant to what's happening today.
Cut a bunch of jokes that you thought would be offensive. You cut 18, he could have been the 19th one, that you knew what would happen. And the other thing is when he was on the Breakfast Club and he was talking about how, what was I supposed to do? Jump up and, Tom Brady did that, right? Tom Brady did that.
I love Robert Kraft. Okay.
What's striking is how little some people believe has changed since Denzel made those comments. According to critics, Black historical trauma continues to be treated as acceptable material for jokes and entertainment. Yet if the same approach were applied to certain other historical tragedies, many believe careers could be damaged almost overnight. As for Kevin Hart's role in the controversy, critics argue that his defensive attitude during the Breakfast Club interview only made matters worse. His repeated question, "What did you want me to do?" and his suggestion that people expected him to physically remove Tony Hinchcliffe from the stage struck many as dismissive. No, maybe he couldn't literally drag Hinchcliffe off stage during the performance, but critics argue he could have publicly distanced himself from the material afterward. At the very least, he could have remained neutral, much like Regina Hall did throughout the roast. Regina didn't laugh at the racist jokes. She maintained her composure and avoided validating that material with her reactions. Kevin, on the other hand, laughed harder and more enthusiastically than almost anyone else in the room. Then, rather than acknowledging why people were upset or simply taking his paycheck and moving on, he doubled down by publicly describing Tony Hinchcliffe's performance as one of the strongest sets of the night.
Part in a movie in 1986. I called it the They Couldn't. Oh. Yeah, he was supposed to be He raped a white woman, and they tried to electrocute him, but it didn't work. And he became sort of a cult hero. And then they tried to hang him, and they tried to do all this stuff. And I had a lot of training day in me. And there were some Jewish people in the audition, and I said, yeah. They said, no, it's funny. It's like they hang them and then they can't. I said, yeah, like you bring some Jewish people into a room and they think it's a shower, but it's gas. Oh. And they said, right. I said, right. That ain't funny. So to me, it wasn't funny about putting a rope around my MFing neck either. I made a point. The guy was like, who the hell is this little nigga?
The accusation that Kevin is an industry plant isn't some brand new talking point that suddenly appeared. It's an argument comedian Katt Williams has been making for years, though many people dismissed his comments at the time as jealousy or bitterness rather than seriously considering them. For context, one of the earliest occasions Katt raised concerns about Kevin's rise to fame goes back to the early 2000s. Around that same period, Dave Chappelle sparked major conversations by claiming that black male entertainers were often pressured into wearing dresses, almost as though it were a strange initiation ritual required before reaching higher levels of success in Hollywood. When Kevin was later asked about Dave's comments, he laughed off the idea and said nothing like that had ever happened to him personally. While he stopped short of explicitly promising he would never wear a dress for a role, Kevin maintained that he would never do anything that could damage or compromise his personal brand.
This, but I'm going to, because we're being honest. People are talking about that joke. Talk about his set. Tony Hinchcliffe.
However, less than a year after making those comments, Kevin suddenly appeared in a Saturday Night Live sketch wearing a dress. And almost immediately after that appearance, his career seemed to skyrocket to an entirely new level. Suddenly, he was landing major blockbuster film roles, headlining huge stadium comedy tours, and securing multi-million-dollar endorsement deals with some of the biggest corporations in the world. Of course, you're free to view that sequence of events as nothing more than a coincidence. Maybe the dress discussion really is just another Hollywood conspiracy theory with no real substance behind it. But Katt Williams has always looked at the situation very differently and with a much more skeptical eye. When Katt was asked about Kevin's SNL dress moment and what it represented, his response suggested that the issue goes far beyond Kevin Hart himself. According to Katt, what we're seeing is a larger system operating behind the scenes with its own expectations and unwritten rules. Kevin, in his view, simply happened to be the person taking his turn within that system at that particular time. Definitely haven't ran into putting on the dress. I mean, you know, you have to have boundaries. You have to have limits that you refuse to cross. Following that controversial dress moment, Kevin's career continued climbing without missing a beat, reaching even greater levels of fame and financial success. Meanwhile, Katt Williams kept finding himself dealing with legal troubles and frequent run-ins with law enforcement. At the same time, tabloid outlets had a field day covering his problems, repeatedly portraying him as an out-of-control addict who had completely lost touch with reality. But Katt never backed down. Instead, he continued speaking out against the people he viewed as industry plants willing to trade authenticity for fame and fortune. In 2018, Katt took aim at Kevin once again, but this time he also criticized comedian Tiffany Haddish during the same discussion. His core argument was that there were countless black female comedians with far more experience and talent who never received a fair opportunity to reach mainstream audiences. According to Katt, Tiffany's breakout success came because she was willing to shape her comedy in a way that appealed to white audiences rather than staying completely authentic to herself. Those comments clearly struck a nerve with Kevin. In response, Kevin and Tiffany appeared together on The Breakfast Club, where Kevin argued that Katt was simply bitter about losing opportunities because of his alleged substance issues and unpredictable behavior. Kevin also claimed during the interview that Katt had never used his platform to help support or elevate other comedians coming up in the industry. Kevin doesn't have to worry about what people are going to say about him wearing a dress because of the long line of dress wearing. Now I'm saying, why we picking old poor little Kevin Hart? Because it was his turn. Katt wasn't willing to let the addict narrative go unanswered. He's always maintained that drugs and substance abuse are lines he simply does not cross. After Kevin publicly repeated those allegations on The Breakfast Club, Katt felt the need to respond and set the record straight regarding his lifestyle and personal choices.
Where Katt Williams comes from, you keep pointing at Hollywood. Hollywood this, the white man, this, and this. When do you take responsibility for your action? You became a risk to the studios, which is why the studios stopped you.
Why was he a risk?
He chose you. Katt Williams, have you ever used your platform to bring the people that were under?
The feud didn't stop there. Fast forward to 2025, and Katt came after Kevin with even more force, labeling him the perfect example of an industry plant and even comparing his situation to the infamous staged attack controversy involving Jussie Smollett.
He wasn't there and off making 85 million. I was over here not making 85 million. But it's all good. I don't mind $1 million a month and keeping my soul. As long as Richard Pryor was at the comedy and a crackhead, they gonna continue to say maybe I am. But again, I urge you, if there's a drug you can do that'll get you Katt Williams level, then you should OD on it.
According to Katt's view of how the entertainment business really works, whether you call it the Illuminati or use some other name entirely, there's ultimately a powerful group of gatekeepers pulling the strings behind the scenes. And in Katt's opinion, you either agree to operate by their rules and expectations, or you'll never be allowed to reach the highest levels of success, fame, and wealth. And Kevin Hart, based on the choices he's made throughout his career and the projects he's been willing to accept, appears to Katt to be a fully accepted member of that exclusive circle.
10 years in Hollywood.
Katt also claimed that several movie roles were taken away from him and handed directly to Kevin Hart instead. According to Katt, this happened because he requested certain scenes be removed from scripts before agreeing to participate. Specifically, he objected to scenes involving romantic or intimate interactions between his character and another male character. When he refused to perform those scenes, Katt says the roles would then be offered to Kevin instead.
Powerful Satan. It's a cabal. It's a consortium. They rock with who they rock with.
Ever since all of that public drama unfolded, Kevin and Katt have reportedly made peace and moved past their differences. Katt even appeared at Kevin's Netflix roast, which many viewed as a sign that the two had buried the hatchet. But here's what stood out to a lot of viewers. Even with the reconciliation, there still seemed to be noticeable tension between them throughout Katt's appearance. If you paid close attention to what Katt was actually saying during his roast set, it didn't always feel like his main goal was simply getting laughs from the crowd. Instead, it often came across as though he wanted a chance to look Kevin directly in the eye and tell him exactly how he felt.
I'm your parent.
For a 5-year period, every single movie that Kevin Hart did was a movie that had been on my desk that all I had said was just, can we take some of this step and fetch it out, and then I can do it. Like, it don't need to be overtly homosexual because I'm not homosexual, right? It doesn't need that to be funny, right? And me saying that and them going, oh yeah, no problem. And then going to give it to this other guy and having him do it just like it was and acting like I'm a bad person because I keep standing on my standard. When you remove all the conspiracy theories and industry speculation from the conversation, what this really comes down to is character and personal integrity. You don't have to believe in secret societies or elaborate Hollywood conspiracies to form an opinion about Kevin Hart based on the choices he's made and the public positions he's taken. Kevin's estimated net worth is reportedly around $400 million, making him one of the richest comedians to ever do it. Yet despite that level of wealth, he's still actively promoting gambling platforms to his audience for additional income. At this stage of his career, with that much money already secured, is it honestly realistic to expect Kevin Hart to suddenly take a principled stand on controversial issues when there's money on the table? Maybe the more important question is why so many people continue treating celebrities like role models and spending their hard-earned money on tickets, merchandise, and products connected to them. I want to know what you think about this entire situation down in the comments below. And be sure to stick around for the next video, where we'll continue diving deeper into these conversations.